Today's story is titled Beyond the Northern Edge by The Republic. The link to the story is in the description below. Please enjoy. I hope you aren't upset with my decisions, my love. The bastion that is my mind broke the moment we could no longer be together. All those years we spent cultivating a home, crushed by your untimely departure and my inability to let go of you. In desperate hope, I clung to every semblance of your presence. Our life together, although brief, yielded countless mementos, novelties, and sentimental ornaments. If I was ever to see you off, it would be with you in the dress I weaved per your request. I hope that is one thing you could be proud of me for. Every detail held up to your very strict standards. Those cornflowers sit upon white lattice. The threaded straps were made soft, and I took the time to embroider your initials where the hanging cloth met soft ankles. Forgive me for not looking at you, but I could not bring myself to even give you one last glance. I was the one to warn you of my cowardice and timid nature, but you didn't care. Watching your box be lowered into the earth felt like looking into the void, that persistent but faint feeling to jump in with you. In my mind's absence, you were already buried beneath clumped dirt and jagged stones. I waited there, with the unrealistic hope that you would crawl out and we could mend our broken life back together. Why can't you humor me? The warmth of your smile, the sight of your lively eyes, the cheer in those welcomed embraces. I held on to all of it. I mourned you like the world had lost one of its treasured saints and heaven gained one more star. With no one to talk to, I broke down. Why? Why would you leave me with the last words that ever left your lips being, "Move on"? How could I? Letting go would be tantamount to forsaking you. I'm sorry, but I rejected your wishes. We lay together once more, you on top of your bed of dirt, and I on the cold ground wrapped together in your wool blanket. Imagining your eyes, I looked longingly into those pools of ink. No matter how much I pleaded with you and begged of you, no answer came. Days passed, and your blanket sank ever more onto my side, but I corrected it by covering you in what was left of my will. I wish you would tug on the blanket like you did in life. What did you expect of me? I did not want to tarnish our time on this earth by burying you deep in my mind, nor by getting rid of your shards of existence. You said that we would brave this world together, but you were my world. And when you died, my world died as well. It took many hands to tear us apart a second time. My family wanted me to forget you, but I refused any notion of the matter. Despite what it took to separate us, I knew that your home still needed its long overdue maintenance. I had hoped to keep the house neat and tidy, but my lengthy departure left it in a worsened state. I felt that I had failed you in more ways than one, but this forced me to become a shut-in. I locked every gate and door, closed every curtain, and extinguished the porch side lantern. There in the dark, I lit candles to keep me company, making a great effort to clean every keepsake. You always knew how to make the house feel like a home. Every mess, every clutter, and every square inch of the house was packed with character. It doesn't even feel like I lived in this house. That's how much of your soul you poured into our everyday living. My own touch was tucked away in a dark corner of the world you made. My desk was never this clean. There always was an unfinished or incomplete book I was working on. It's funny, really. In my attempt to let go of the past, as I flipped through the pages, I saw your branding at the most recent entry. A lipstick stain where I placed my initials. Oh, love, where are you now that I can't pretend I'm stronger than I really am? I will cherish this, even against the advisement that I shouldn't. The first night was one filled with an overwhelming feeling of loneliness. Overhead loomed the memories of our time together. You were a great choreographer, whereas I was a novice author. How our paths managed to cross is a mystery that still perplexes me to this day. I was down on my luck after my first book failed to fly off the shelves, a sense of defeat that had me questioning my capabilities. Your theater was open to the public for the low price of 25 cents, a price I was willing to dish out since I had no future prospects of making a living. My seat was still a disappointment, for a beam stood in my line of sight. Still, I looked past it onto the brightly illuminated stage. Every performance was forgettable. Clumsy as they were, the dancers still garnered applause. I was ready to conclude my purchase was a complete waste and that I'd be having sleep for dinner. That's when a fair lady of decent height, dark lengthy hair, and lively complexion stepped onto the platform. There, on the empty stage, you performed a graceful recital, all while others dozed off. I was fixated on your pirouette, and how you seemed to glide through the air like water. You were a treasure to have been my greatest fortune to have witnessed. After the theater closed, I nervously awaited your departure. My hands were clammy and my posture was poor. Finally, you emerged from the fold and I approached, where I showered you in praise. A beautiful muse, flustered and timid. I made my adoration known and asked for your affection. You left without answering, but a small part of me had the lingering assumption that you obliged me. Quiet as you were, my timidness never allowed me to speak for you. Our decision to move to the dense forest was one that came after my most recent book sold decently, just enough to afford a good bit of land. The plot was an isolated clearing deep within the forest. Our luck was plentiful as it bordered near a cliff to the north, a pond to the south, and an infinite view of the sunrise to our east. You can imagine my surprise when a 2-story loft was already established upon this neck of the woods. I wasted no time in stealing credit for this when you asked me if I had prior knowledge of it. Truth be told, the house was unknown to everyone, even the land developers that sold me the plot. Poor thing. It was mighty despite the weathered look. Inside, the elements had worked their way into every wall and floorboard. This towering obstacle didn't seem to faze you, because after standing and analyzing the house, you got straight to work taking note of everything that needed refurbishing. I was thankful that our combined income was enough to cover the materials needed for the project. Horse-drawn carriages brought mountains of boards, panels, and components to the foot of our remote abode. We worked countless hours to rebuild the beauty of this lost gem, and you added every bit of your character to its vastness. I never thought I would find myself coming around to the color burgundy. I had been a strong fan of navy blue up until this point. The house really was a statement piece, because our fireplace was emerald green. The rooms were different shades of red, Every internal and exterior corner was highlighted by white, and the porch wrapped around the house. To add the cherry on top, our house was crowned by a weather vane, a mare variant. Truly, our house was the stuff of legends, for it brought you joy and me a slight bit of embarrassment. A barn buried deep within the clutches of a dense forest. Our first night spent within a walled house and beside a roaring chimney was victorious. It was pleasant to seat myself by the green-tiled mantel instead of wavering on through smoke in the eyes. I was thankful we would never have to spend another agonizing minute out on the dusty, uncomfortable ground. It was one you decided to depart from with an early rest. After you left, and I stepped out into the cold night, I stared out at the tree line while the moon hovered above. As it rained light over the canopy top, I sheepishly took out a small wooden pipe, remembering how you hated the smell of tobacco. This was a great opportunity to indulge in decadence. From my overcoat pocket, I grabbed my tiny pouch of dried leaves. Packing the fodder into the barrel of the cannon, I lit the fuse and smoke came bellowing out in a transparent ribbon. I looked back out towards the canopy, but the heavy smoke from the chimney blocked my line of sight. A slender figure loomed in the background, cloaked in shadow and obscured by thick smoke. It stared back at me with piercing white eyes, like two holes poked through black fabric. I stood up and attempted to confront the figure. It pointed up towards the second story, right where you were sleeping. I tried to look stern and well put together, a poor attempt to say the least. We exchanged glances. This is until a sudden noise broke the eerie silence. My tobacco burnt a hole through my poorly constructed pipe, and the bowl hit the hard deck with a heavy thud. Scared me half to death. It stole my attention for less than a second, but when I looked back up, the figure was gone. I don't know who they were, but one thing was clear. They knew where we lived, and worse yet, where we slept. I retreated inside and locked all the doors, taking the liberty of barricading the windows and doorways with boards. I didn't catch much sleep after that. Every night from that point on was spent with one eye open. As a means of security, I suggested we both purchase 38 revolvers just to be safe. I can't quite explain it, but that night felt as if it was the last time our life was ever tame again. 2 years. 2 painfully long years. That is all it took to compromise the foundations of our small and inconsequential life. Oh, death. It worked its way into our lives, but the lambs bore the full force of its strong tides. I remember our daughters, but not as they were. My mind made their characters for them, like it was only hours ago that they cried and made loud disagreements. You never voiced your concern about raising children far from paved roads, but you didn't protest the idea of raising them wild either. Although, while they would have grown up wild, they certainly weren't going to be birthed wild. You and the town doctor fought the real battle. I was just your crowd of supporters. It was the last push that was the most concerning. I braced for small complaints from small lungs. It was quiet. I don't think the doctor could have coded this devastating development with all the sweets in the world. Our daughter was gone before she was ever here. Maybe that's when you started to put on a better disguise. And what did I do? I shook from the new reality, but I suppressed my melancholy beneath an emotionally absent shell. If you were good at hiding your emotions, then I was callous in their dismissal. I should have been more available. You were hurting, and all I did was contribute to your anguish. What I did next was borderline cruel. I was so selfish, so much so that I made it known to you. I wanted a family, far beyond just 2 people, for I still wanted a daughter. Like always, you did not protest. Forced was this union to the point it did not bring anything within the realm of compassion. My selfishness was impartial to your pain. We made 2 precious children, and the earth swallowed them up. I can't imagine how you felt, for I was barely managing to keep my composure. You stayed strong for a coward like me. The worst was yet to come. I promised you something from the town as a means to bring some semblance of happiness back into our lives. I'd put an order in for a set of brass grooming instruments. I remembered you looking at them and taking the time to assess their craftsmanship. Gearing up to head out, I hugged you tightly. I just wanted to remind you that you were loved, that you were cherished, that you were treasured like sapphires. You were very good at hiding your emotions and disguising them as something else. You threw me a smile and caressed my cheek. You managed to trick me into a state of ease. I left, and you got to work to enact your plan. When I returned, the rustling of the leaves and the creaking of the branches felt especially loud, louder than usual. The atmosphere was as dense as the woods. In my heart, I knew something was wrong. I was within view of the house, and the sight didn't bring me any comfort. I signaled the mare to make haste, but it didn't make any difference. I entered a cold home, one without its owner. That's when I saw you. You, a beautiful muse with bleeding wrists, laid in a pool of your own making. I still cannot get over how well you crafted your facade. I left thinking you were in a better state of mind than me. I returned too late and saw how you truly felt. 2 became 3, and the earth swallowed you whole. That brings us to now. Your beautiful palace is barely kept together by my incapable hands. The family has suggested I look into selling the land and bundle our house with it. I would not listen to reason. Instead, I became a recluse boarded up within your vast hall, holding down the fort, all in a frivolous attempt to keep everything in place for your return. A man can hope for the impossible. These halls are anything but still. Out of the corner of my eye, I see figures shuffling in and out of rooms. The fire keeps me company, but it too has taken on new life. As if it were trying to jump out and grab me, the outstretched hand of the flames nicked a few too many instances. I am punished for my incompetence, punished by every splinter, every nick, every cut, every sleepless night. I am bashed for how I turned my back on you. You, a gem I carelessly lost, and one I did not treasure despite your every bit of compassion. Even now, I hear you knocking on the walls of my skull. It sounds awful, as if a grandfather clock has been jammed into my mind. The tolls are deafening. How many, many times have I told you I'm sorry? However, the tolls became wooden and the rhythm softened. I could hear now that they weren't bells tolling the hour, but the sound of a visitor. the most impossible thing would happen to me. You never liked her, despite my many attempts to remind you she was only a friend. Clarice helped me to publish my book. She is and will always be a welcomed friend, but she did not come as a friend. I opened the door to greet her as I would with every guest. Her intentions were not what I expected. We conversed, and she gave her condolences. It was nice to hear someone other than family and in-laws state their pity. That is when the topic shifted to something that even now I cannot fathom. Clarice asked me one simple question, but it was not to me. What now? It broke me. Now that I didn't have a world to live in, what would be my next course of action? How, in this impossibly large world, could I go on without my greatest tether? I spent a long time dwelling on the question. I didn't even notice when she placed her hand over mine. I must have scared her when mine recoiled in surprise. I couldn't deal with this. Not right now. I rushed to usher her out. However, Clarice turned to look at me before she left. There, she confessed a long-repressed infatuation aimed towards me. I don't know what she expected, but it probably wasn't an abrupt dismissal. I really couldn't deal with this. It was too much. I leaned on the shut door with my back pressed firmly against it, waiting for the sounds of clacks to pitter-patter away into the distance. I fought back tears. How could I be presented with this decision? My beloved wife had just died. Her memory was burned into my mind. Her scent, her image, her presence. It wasn't something I was ready to just toss away. I am not a bachelor. I will never be a bachelor. It wasn't Clarice's fault. She didn't kill my wife or cause my woes, but my ignorant mind placed all my built-up anger upon her. The heat of my anger went away when hours passed. Perhaps this was my avenue back to normalcy. If I was ever to move on, I would have come to terms with my new reality. Oh, love, you weren't coming back. I was too delusional to see it, too hopeful to let go of you, my one and only. I held your picture, sliding my hand to wipe away the accumulated dust. I remove you from the glass and wooden frame, making my way towards your emerald fireplace, topped with a pine mantle. The fire I built was dying, so I set you aside and threw more logs into the coals. As the fire was gaining its foothold, I sat on the hard wooden floor, caressing you with my fleeting admiration. I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to regain my independence and walk out to form a new world. The room lit up with a resurgence of an emboldened flame. This was it, the next step to letting go. Time stood at a standstill. Was it truly a coincidence that happened as I neared the fire? Holding you in my hands, I felt as though I was making a horrible mistake. It was as if burning this picture would cause irreparable damage to the kingdom you created. The empress of these lands, reduced to ashes, and her memory left to fade away. An end unbefitting for such a tall figure of the dense forest and the Red Keep. Please, please don't be upset with me. I just want you to rest and for me to move on. I cast you into the flames and instantly hyperventilated. The borders of your picture closed in on themselves. The warmth of your smile was fading, and a cold chill set in. I burned my fingertips to rescue you from the rage of the flames. I pressed my palm to snuff out the embers that nearly wiped away your image. but still, the damage was done. I panicked so greatly that my vision grew darker. I fell unconscious, drifting away into a nightmare. I walked down a long and narrow hall, lined with every memory my subconscious could muster. Behind me, a wrathful fire was erasing everything. In a desperate act, I tried to fight off the flames, but my dream state was burned badly by the uncontrollable outbreak. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed as many memories and ran down the hall. The fire kept pace, and it followed me in a chase. I would lose a frame every time I picked up the pace. The fire only seemed to gain speed, and the heat was burning the back of my head. I ran and ran and ran, but the flames enveloped me. I melted, and the memories burned away. The floor gave way, and I fell through into the abyss. The fear and pain that covered me like a net jolted me awake. The house was as I left it. The quiet night sky was everywhere. That's when I gained my bearings on reality. That's when I saw you. You just stood there. There in the reflection of the mirror. Could you blame me for abandoning every sense of fear? How the dread was a fleeting moment. All I wanted to do was see your beautiful face ever since you left a hole in my heart. I neared you and placed my palm on the surface of the gilded mirror. I couldn't move your long hair out of the way, but I still felt the calming of your presence. Stuck in a trance, I couldn't tell you when you plunged your hand into my chest. The wriggling of gnarled digits finally broke my fixated gaze. I looked down and saw spindly fingers digging around for my heart. Panic set in. I couldn't control my fear, and it forced me into a sprint. My attempt to coordinate an escape led me to leaping from the top of the stairs to the first floor. A moment that felt like ages as I had time to think about the descent. You were fast, faster than sound and more nimble than a cat. Every framed picture, I saw you making a dash for me, reaching your claws out for me, blackened fingertips still greased by drawn blood. I hit the floor with a numbing and paralyzing impact. Out of reach, your rage filled every corridor and ushered away the silence. Glass flew through the air like falling glistening snow. I curled up into a ball, avoiding any possibility of being snatched up into the dark. Splinters, dust, and glass shards cut my skin and surrounded me. You looked far more terrifying than I ever could have imagined, but I still couldn't see your face. White, hot rage filled your eyes, while the dark cloaked your frame. I warned you of my cowardice. You took over and covered my eyes for me. By the end of the rampage, in the reflection of a million shards, I saw you pointing outside, out towards the cliff that sat atop the northern point of your kingdom. But the coward in me made his case. It's not my fault. Everyone is always trying to make me think differently. Do this, do that, stop moping about, move on. When I was ready to move on, that is when you came back to me. I didn't bother you that I was hurting just standing in your house, that I kept revisiting your resting place, or when I curled up in a pool of my own blood, thinking of you. I was in a petrified moment of never-ending mourning, but when I decided to leave behind the painful past, you judged me. What more can I possibly do? This house is not my own, so why would the rot and the wear and the erosion find its way deep inside me? I'm sorry. I am so sorry I am not strong for you. I am plagued by pain and troubled by remorse. I miss you, but not like this. I may not have understood you fully, at least not now. However, I will do as you ask. I will not stay a minute longer, for your absence has left a deep pit where my heart stood. My dear Elizabeth, I am coming home. I know what must be done now. After all these pages, to truly be with you, I must cast away all attachments that keep me grounded. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I know how much you loved your palace. It had to be done if I had any chance of being with you when I crossed over. You loved every minute detail that made up your palace. The intricate corridors, the vast foyer, and the north side porch. I could never grant this kingdom of yours an honorable end, not even in my wildest dreams. But oil and wax will do the trick. When they lowered you into the earth's warm embrace, I crumbled into a million pieces, with no hope of surviving on without you at the head of this man-o-war. In my hand, I hold the last tether that anchors me to the void. So I will let this flame touch saturated wood and bind me to the painful past no more. It grew and grew until the mighty face of this fort began to buckle and eventually crash in on itself. The sound of crackling and popping filled the air of the cold night. Embers and cinders danced high above your beautiful garden. Scalding hot coals burned the sweet grass you carefully cultivated. The fire burned on, stripping panels of their sturdy walls, shattering the stained glass, and giving way for the roof to crash through every floor. At that moment, deep within the heart of the raging fire, I saw you, dancing something so beautiful I couldn't help but fall on my knees and hands. I saw you dance through the flickers of the flames while staring back at me. You slipped through the towering spires with such agility that all would envy your grace. With such nimble agility, you navigated the flames and pranced around the ashes. When the fire began to die, you left the charred ribs of your palace for the vastness of the stars. Behind the brightness of the stars, I could see you perform something, but it was hard to make out just what that was. I focused so intently on you that I didn't notice the time when the heat had dissipated. You must have seen my attempts through my squints, because it was then that you moved on to your pale white stage upon the face of the moon. I could see clearly your pirouette, as if it was in life, but I saw your arms cross near your waist, one hand wrapped around the other while you held out an invitation. It was your beckoning candle. The smell of smoke didn't agitate my weakened lungs. Rather, it was reminiscent of your scent. The aroma created a powerful urge to pursue you. I hope you'll forgive my appearance. I didn't have time to dress for you. Perhaps you'll excuse my emaciated frame and bloodless skin. Even then, your heaven-facing hand still held out for mine. My first steps into the night were heavy, but I made my way towards your welcoming presence. As I stepped forward, I tried to join you and dance. My clumsy attempts left something to be desired, but you didn't care. You were a graceful choreographer, and I was the fool that held you down. I vaulted you towards the cliff that stood north of your palace. The closer I inched, I felt all of life's plagues leave me. I noticed something within you becoming more jubilant. You began to dance as I came closer. You were dancing, and it brought me much needed comfort. You were dancing. I was dancing. The stars were dancing. The remnant flames were dancing. Yes, we were all dancing. This was not a farewell, but rather the beginning to a new chapter. The world was dancing and celebrating our reunion, my lovely Elizabeth. I shed the worries and woes, the fears and doubts, and the pain that your loss had left me. At the edge, I stood there looking out towards the abyss. I glanced at your beautiful frame against the moonlight. I don't remember you being so tall before. I took one last glance at the home you built. It was razed to the ground, and still it was art. The night seemed to perpetually linger, but I would not waste another second straying from paradise. I'm coming home. Out there, I will meet you beyond the northern edge.